Welcome to Knock Your Socks Off podcast. My name is Hannah.
I'm Ravi.
And Ravi, what are you knocking my socks off with today?
We are talking anti-hero or anti-heroes, but not in the sense, not in the way that you think anti-hero. We're not talking.
We're not Taylor Swifting out here.
I don't know what that means.
She has a whole song
Does she really?
called the anti. Yes.
Anyway, off topic
that's
already.
That's all I need to tell.
But we're
Sorry,
not talking
Swifties.
like typical anti-hero like the
Yeah.
Deadpools. We're talking more that I'm bringing the concept of like why I am anti-heroes in modern science fiction comic books, such as like the Luke Skywalkers, and basically why like some of the most famous quote heroes are actually fucking idiots.
Wow.
And therefore I'm anti-hero and I'm all about the Voldemorts of the goddamn world.
All right. Well, shoot. I think
Shoot.
we're already on a roll.
I just get very heated about
Quite.
heroes for some reason.
Quite. I'm into it. You're already like knocking my socks off a little bit, so.
Before though, I want to, because when I was building out my outline and everything, I was under the impression of like, oh, actually, we're gonna be talking more like anti-heroes, like the traditional sense.
Okay. Sure.
And
sure,
it got
sure,
me
sure.
wondering, like, do you actually like what's the definition of anti-hero to you, and or do you know what the Webster Dictionary meaning for anti-hero is?
Ooh. I mean, I think initially when you even kind of pitched the topic, I think I was thinking, like, well, are we just going to have a villain podcast? You know what I mean? Like, is it kind of just like whoever's against the heroes, you know, or kind of the like underdog hero kind of things, you know, like is Han Solo an anti-hero, or like is it just like Darth Vader and, you know, or something like that? Like, it's like how clean cut are we going with this?
Sure.
And no, I don't know like the actual definition of anti-heroes, but I do like when thinking about storytelling at large, like I do love a complicated character. So I think what I'm excited about is getting into like these like complicated layered discussions, because those I do really enjoy, especially when they're around like our main character / hero in a sense.
Right.
But no, I don't know what the actual definition.
So the actual
is.
definition of anti-hero
Yeah.
is a central character in a story, movie, or drama who lacks conventional heroic attributes. That is the actual definition. And what's interesting with that definition is it's very open-ended.
Sure.
Like it's not a straight cut, like to your point of like, is Han Solo an anti-hero?
Yeah.
Yeah, you could argue he does not have the conventional heroic attributes. Like look
Sure.
at Star Wars Episode 4.
Sure.
You know, he takes his money and
Yes.
he runs. He does come back because
Sure.
he's after something much more valuable than money, which is respect of his peers.
Oh, sure.
That's how I
Sure.
looked at it. What were you thinking?
Absolutely.
But you
Absolutely.
also hit a nail on the head with the why like anti-hero is more interesting. And
Yeah.
a quote from the Psychology Today article that I was researching on.
Come on, research.
I mean, the internet's just a great place. Villains and anti-heroes are often complex characters with richly detailed psychological backstories, which helps fans connect to them.
Truth.
Yeah, and
love that.
I think that's a really interesting take.
Yeah.
Because like some of the best characters, I'm just gonna say characters. I'm not talking villain, hero, anti-hero, whatever. I'm just saying characters in general. I would say that traditionally I find the villains and the anti-heroes more interesting, and this helps my point as to why heroes are fucking stupid.
Okay.
They are just fucking dumb.
Uh-huh.
And in modern day storytelling.
Sure.
And, you know, I'm going to definitely dive deep on, like, the Star Wars characters and how fucking dumb they are.
Okay, great.
But, you know, modern day storytelling, there's just a lot of just stupid things that they do that just doesn't make them, in my sense, a real hero. They are probably anti-heroes.
Got it. Here, I have a question for you then to like probably send us on a bit of a tangent. But what is your take on the current like kind of pop culture call out of like somebody having main character energy then?
I mean, isn't main character energy more like the idea that the world revolves around you?
Right.
Right. So I don't really feel like a main character or main character energy has anything to do with the idea of being a hero.
You don't?
No.
Oh, interesting. Because to me, I think that's the space where it's like every main character is essentially the hero of their own story, or even kind of like when we like every time that like we watch like an interview with a person, like an actor who's playing a villain, they always kind of say like they are, in their mind, they are playing the hero. Like they are kind of this like, right character. You know what I mean? So to me, kind of like when you are the main character, like maybe you're not like saving people, or maybe you're not like a hero, but like you're kind of you are the hero of your own story. And so I'm just like, I guess my thought was like, I wonder if like the space of like, I agree with you that I feel more connected and compelled towards a complicated anti-hero, potentially villain kind of thing. I definitely don't connect with all villains, but like the space of like that, you know, I like a complicated moment, but the narrative right now of like, oh, I'm like in my main character energy, you know, or like,
I think that's more to
I don't
do.
know.
I think that's more to do with just like, I think more the idea that people are just self-centered.
Sure.
Because
but do you think heroes are though?
No, because it like if you're looking at a traditional story, like let's take Star Wars, right?
Okay.
Luke is painted as the hero. He's trying to defeat this evil empire.
Yeah.
He's trying to give freedom for people, etc. Like, he doesn't come across as like main character energy, because main character energy is like if Luke was main character energy, he wouldn't be going and sacrificing or potentially sacrificing his life to better those around him. Main character energy, I think, is much more like, why is my latte not the way I want it? Why are you not serving me first? Why are these bad things happening to just me? Boo-hoo is me. That's main character energy in my mind.
Interesting. Okay, good. No,
like,
this is great. This is actually totally helping me, I think, understand what you also mean then by anti-hero, and or kind of this like, not disgust, but like this like space of like disgust over a hero.
Sure.
But, you know.
So
I don't know. But
I came up with a couple of examples.
Yeah, okay, great.
And because we're on Star Wars, we'll start with Star Wars first.
Great.
Okay.
Perfect.
If you can, remember the first time you saw episodes 4, 5, and 6, and more specifically episode 4.
Okay.
Obi-Wan Kenobi, hero or not hero? Just get an answer, go.
Oh,
Don't even think about
hero.
it. Okay. Not a hero. Everything he does is self-interest, right? Everything he had done up until that point. Now, granted, when episode 4 dropped in 1977, we did not have the Obi-Wan Kenobi series. We did not have the prequel series. We had no real functioning idea of what
just
Obi
Uncle
was
Ben.
doing. We just had Uncle Ben.
Yeah.
If they had left it like that, and if it was just strictly...
Or not Uncle Ben, sorry, Old Ben.
Old Ben.
Oh, sorry, wait, sorry. Old Ben.
If it was just strictly what we got in episode 4, this old man talking about the Clone Wars,
right.
Him sacrificing himself to save Luke, sure, hero. The problem is, again, with modern day storytelling and the idea of the franchise and the IP, we have so much other backstory.
Yeah.
And for me, Obi-Wan Kenobi stopped being a hero when the Kenobi series came out, because he had a second fucking opportunity to end a mass murderer. And what did he do? Boo-hoo is me. If anything, motherfucker has main character energy and was like, I can't do this because it's going to make me sad.
Sure.
So, fuck Obi-Wan Kenobi. He ain't a hero. He is anti-hero.
But when you first saw episode 4, you did think, or maybe even 5, you know, and then even into when you had his Force Ghost or like all the things, like you saw him, even maybe 1 through 1, 2, 3, you still saw him as a hero.
When I first saw it.
No, I know. Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
But as an adult, like even as we're having this conversation, remembering what he does, he makes an orphan go and correct his mistake.
Sure.
And again, back when those films first came out, we didn't have all of his mistakes. That's not hero qualities. That is just jackassery.
Sure. And like and processing through like negative coping mechanisms, you know.
So Obi-Wan Kenobi, not a hero.
Interesting.
Not even close to being a hero. He is insanely flawed. And to the point of like the villains and the anti-heroes being more interesting because you can connect to them.
Yeah.
There you go. He's more interesting because he is a super flawed individual.
Sure. But then hasn't it been known though that like Star Wars is based off a lot of different like kind of classics,
hero stories, yes.
Including the hero's journey.
Yes.
And that hero's journey is Luke's journey, yes?
Yes, Luke is the hero.
Yeah, even though earlier, didn't you just say Luke wasn't a hero?
Once we get to episodes 7, 8, and 9, yes.
Oh, okay.
That he becomes anti-hero.
Oh. Okay, great. Wow.
In episode 4, 5, and 6, Luke is definitely hero. By the time we get into the sequel trilogy, 7, 8, and 9, what he does to his own nephew, anti-hero. What he does to Grogu, forcing a decision on him, anti-heroes.
Sure.
That's not freedom. That's not whatever. That is enforcing your will. And again, and I'm glad you brought up main character.
Yeah.
Because that's what it is. It's main character syndrome.
Yeah. You're
it's not
switching
heroic.
from
Yes. It's not heroic traits at all.
Mm-hmm.
Ahsoka just, or not Ahsoka, sorry. Acolyte just finished.
Yeah.
Acolyte is a fascinating story specifically around the character of Khmer.
Sure.
Because what he does at the very end, he sees two people struggling, and he does, to a degree, sacrifice. Yes, there is self-interest in there.
Of course.
But you could argue those are like heroic traits, which is fucking weird.
Which is weird, but it's also, again, I think, but there's good storytelling in there because there is a space where, right, the hero isn't just the quote-unquote good guy.
No.
You know, or the person who you always agree with, like, why they're fighting for what they're fighting for, but to hear more about, hear more of their why. Like, you become, like, more empathetic or, like, more, like, understanding of why they're doing, they're making their choices.
Again, I think, like, in the Obi-Wan Kenobi case, I still feel like they ruined the character more by giving more information.
Got it.
Right? Like, and it's like...
Because making someone an anti-hero is ruining them?
No, but by giving and showing more of their flaws.
I see.
It takes away from, because if
from kind of their like mastery and like mystical.
like the reason that we have heroes and villains is because we need compelling story, right?
Yeah.
We need someone or something to root for.
Sure.
If it turns out all the heroes are morons.
Yeah.
Why am I don't want to root for a fucking moron. Like I want to root for a hero, like somebody that's doing something justified, that's good, whatever.
Yeah.
Yes, it may be boring, but like, you know, like one of the reasons I think majority of people loved Game of Thrones, those early seasons, is because the good guys were not winning. The good guys consistently were losing. But then at some point it's like, this isn't interesting anymore. Why am I going to watch a show
for the people I like?
Yeah, they just keep losing. Like that's not fun. That is an emulation of like real life, and that's depressing.
Sure.
Like we watch these stories because we want to escape. We want to like believe there's something better or whatever.
Yeah. Okay, so I mean, and maybe you'll get into all these things, but can I ask questions as we go?
No, definitely.
Okay, so in the essence of an antihero, like what is your preferred medium to absorb like the hero's story then? Because I think there is a space where it's like we at first, you know, especially when you're like talking about Star Wars, is like from 4, 5, and 6, you kind of get these like, these are the beats of the characters, and this is kind of like the simplicity. But as you expand, I mean, as you expand anything, I mean, as you meet a new friend at a like fun knitting class, like you think at one point you're like, oh, like this person's, these are kind of their traits, this is kind of who they are. But like the longer you go to these classes and more you learn about them, you're kind of like, oh, they're complicated. Like they have some
why
layers.
Did you come up with knitting?
I don't know.
Out of all the friend activities, and that's not even a common friend activity. Like maybe I'm completely wrong here.
There's
if anyone's
clubs.
listening,
There's lots of knitting clubs.
Right, but if I don't feel like that's the norm. Like that's not like the norm is like let's go grab a beer or let's go go like the range or let's go to the arcade or a sporting event.
Okay.
I don't feel like a lot of people are like let's go knitting. It's weird.
Please, knitters, come for this one. But I'm saying just like in the space of like when you can meet someone and you might not. Because I guess when any other scenarios you're naming, or like anytime you get around alcohol or whatever, you're kind of naturally gonna like, let me dive into stuff. Like, oh, let's like talk deeply. It's like when you're just at like a hobby class, when you're at something that you're doing as a hobby, you kind of just like talk like surface level for a while, like, and then you kind of like only slowly kind of progress into like, oh, like where are you from? Like, you know, like not even where you're from, but just like, why are you here? What led you here? What do you want from this knitting class? Why did you start knitting? Oh, you went through this really hard thing in life. Oh, now you're here. Knitting brings you joy. Whatever, all these things, right? And these spaces where like these opportunities, but like is there a preferred do you think that there's a best medium for telling like a hero's or an anti-hero's like story, like in the essence of like do we always need more story to like dive into somebody, or can we just get like the big,
I remember this quote
hits?
And I'm paraphrasing from a film professor I had in college. Less is more.
Okay.
Less is always more. The idea of like not showing all of your cards, I think, makes a more interesting and compelling story. It's why, again, we're still in the Star Wars. We're going to move into like a Marvel space, Harry Potter, and a couple other like random ones here. But like within the Star Wars space specifically, you know, there's always this question of like, why is it we can never emulate what happened with the originals? Like, why have we lost that like mystical joy that Star Wars brought, and that's because it was less was more. We did not know so much backstory around this, and even the backstory and quote the lore, or the non-canonical stuff that came afterwards that people like really got like crazy about. I hate that I'm admitting this, but it was because of the novelization that they did.
Yeah,
they released so many books and graphic novels and things that as a person consuming that content, you had to use your imagination, your kind of like senses, if you will, to like decide and understand what's happening.
Yeah.
Now it's being shoved in our face, and
sure,
we're gonna know what Clone 22 did every single fucking day of the Clone Wars series.
Yeah.
And we're gonna know exactly when Anakin had bathroom breaks.
Sure.
Because
100%.
that's storytelling now.
Yeah. It was even storytelling. For the sake of like when you're, because to me in Star Wars, as we're still kind of on that, like the anti-hero was Darth Vader. Like,
no, he's villain.
Was the space of like in the arc of the whole thing though. Like he was villain until he was like this like anti-hero of like he was in a sense the hero that brought down Palpatine and the Emperor, but like the space of like
but no, like he's not.
But there was less is more. What I'm saying is like there was less is more. It's like we only needed this space where it was like, yeah, he was is like the most epic villain of all things, because we didn't have a lot of him. Because we only had these like tiny little clips, and we didn't learn his big reveal until the end of Empire Strikes. It's like these things that was so much about less is more. And then at the very end, it's like, oh damn, like he, takes the mask off and he was able to like really be the chosen one that he was, all these things. But like the space of, that really was the key of less is more. And then we
just got everything. But going into like I said, I we could talk all day about Star Wars, but I have other examples of stupid characters. Wanda.
Stupid. Oh, sure. I like Wanda, so let's get into it.
Wanda is a pain in the butt character. And I want to preface this with a couple of things first. Wanda is not right in what she does. She's not right in the head.
In WandaVision.
In WandaVision. And I think the thing that frustrates me a lot with Wanda specifically is that at first it was the fan base. The fans were like justifying what she did in that show. And then the characters in the MCU justified it as well. And that's when I was like, okay, this is fucking stupid.
When did characters in the MCU justify it?
Rambo. When towards the end of WandaVision, they were like okay with what she does. There is the military guy that was like against what Wanda was doing, which to me, I was rooting for that guy, even though his plans were evil and nefarious or whatever. But Wanda was holding a city hostage because she was going through it. She had lost the love of her life, and things were just going really bad for her. The problem, though, with that is like she was considered a hero first, right? She was considered a hero, and when that show ended, she was still considered okay-ish hero. Like, it's okay, you were going through it, so no biggie, right? Which is, again, selfish. Like she was being selfish. She had very much main character syndrome going. And obviously, come Doctor Strange, she went full bad. So she truly went from hero, anti-hero, villain.
Yeah.
And
I would say her origin isn't a hero, though. She is the villain of. Oh my God, I was about to say
Age
Optimus
of Ultron.
Prime. Yes, Age of Ultron.
Age of Optimus Prime.
I was trying to think all of a sudden where it was just in the space of like, oh no, what is it? Yeah, Age of Ultron. Like she is the villain. Like at the end of what is it? Not Civil War, but where she and they're like in the little prison and like they're like, oh my gosh, these twins have powers. It's like, and then they're at the actual villains of Age of Ultron. Like she comes in on the wrong side, has to choose. Her brother dies.
Right.
Like, and then she's like essentially begrudgingly she's an Avenger.
Sure.
But like also like still in prison as an Avenger until she can prove her worthiness, and then like never really does.
Right.
But
so
then,
she's
like,
never
then,
ever.
like,
she's never really then, I guess.
She's kind of always the anti-hero.
Right. Which was, like, as I was like researching and thinking
Isn't
about
that
this.
interesting?
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. That's like I kind of want to go back and watch Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness.
Okay.
Because I'm sure it would be interesting or
Sure.
more interesting. Because again, like I guess Doctor Strange causes all of that fucking problems because again, he's being very anti-hero.
Yes.
Being selfish and I want to be with the girl again and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, but I just think that there's a space where, I mean, now granted, I wasn't a fan of Multiverse of Madness. I don't think it was like the most well done, and like even I've seen different interviews, and not to speak for Elizabeth Olsen, but like that she wasn't also like the biggest fan of where they took WandaVision into Multiverse of Madness, even to where she at different times she was like, did they watch the show? Like like where we left it, and then where we're just like putting her now, like is kind of this like wild thing, but the space of like, to me, the complicatedness doesn't mean that you have to like think that this person is this like epic hero who is everything to everybody, but like that the complications of somebody is intriguing, and that doesn't make everything that she ever does is like, oh, this is the most right thing ever, but that like there's enough like intrigue and like stickiness to where you're like, but Wanda is fascinating and like fun to watch as much as like the complicated, Bucky Barnes, who also like goes from like friend of Cap to like basically a person who's like what what's your take on Bucky?
Bucky is true anti-hero.
True anti-hero.
Remember, my whole thing, my argument here is heroes that are stupid.
Okay.
And that really are just anti-heroes and just stay anti-hero. Or like true to the anti-hero like play.
You don't think Wanda's true to the anti-hero play the whole time?
No, she tries to be this hero. Her redemption thing in Civil War, like from Ultron to Civil War, like she's trying to and then Infinity War and then
is Bucky not also trying to be a hero?
No. He's trying to like get over his shit.
What?
He's just trying to live a nice simple life.
Is Wanda not?
No, Wanda.
She does happen to come
Wanda
to control
held
people's
a
minds,
city
but she was also
hostage.
trying to live her.
That's
her
not
peaceful
living your
life.
life. That is being evil. Wanda was not trying to live her life.
All right, fine. Bucky was trying to live his life. I will say.
He was trying. Like, what did in Falcon Winter Soldier?
True.
We see him like going to therapy, trying to write amends for what he did.
Fair.
He was trying to close the book and be done.
Okay.
And then they just pulled him back in.
All right, fair. I mean, and same with Falcon and Winter. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Boom. Boom.
I still love Wanda.
Let's get into Battlestar Galactica.
So say we all.
Frackin' toasters.
There.
I bleed for the toasters. Let's talk specifically. There's only really one. Like everybody in that show, nobody is a hero in that show. Number one.
Nobody. Not even Adama.
Gaius Baltar by far he's the biggest main character syndrome person ever. The president thinks she's a hero. She probably falls within the Lee Adama space. Lee Adama though, like genuinely thinks he's a hero. He genuinely thinks what I'm doing is for the greater good. Everything I'm doing is great. And then it's just not. Everything he does, like majority of the things he does, they're not there with like what Gaius Baltar does, but they are up there in terms of like, bruv, you are fucking everything up because of your selfish, like being selfish and
totally,
and just being a jackass.
100%.
Like he's just a jackass,
100%.
and he never ever gets into the true anti-hero in the
sure
the definition standpoint.
He's just an idiot.
But he's just an idiot. He's blinded by the idea that he thinks he's a hero.
He definitely thinks he's a hero, and but basically aside from Starbuck, people also tell him he's a hero. Like people do kind of want him to be like, you are Adama's son, so like
you're
this
the golden
must
boy.
be exactly. This is like where you're going, and it's like this space of like, well, it's not really the case, as well as he doesn't ever rise up to that, but it's like, which is like his peril, but then also like just what he has to like accept as well. I think so many characters in Battlestar Galactica go through these like ways, including the Cylons, including when they find like even when like the first, is it the first 5 or the first 6?
The final 5.
Well, the final 5, but like
the original.
Yeah,
the original like skin jobs.
Yeah, is the space of like when they aren't aware that they are Cylons, and then them having to like figure out like that they are. Like it's like I think that they're telling of, again, which I think that the TV medium allows for like so many, especially when you were like back in the TV medium of like 25 episodes or 23 episodes a season, like you could tell so many stories. But I thought they were like so well done.
I mean, side tangent on like the Battlestar stuff. Like Battlestar is such a unique show where there's not a lot of filler.
No,
like everything is like very like on point and like progresses a storyline or the main storyline forward, and like that is incredibly rare now. Incredibly rare,
and also like it. Like, now granted, I think where something I loved about Battlestar Galactica is something I also loved about Clone Wars was like even when they weren't in the spaces of, oh, this is exactly like Clone Wars definitely had filler episodes, and you could say probably in some fashion people might think that some BSG episodes are, but the space of like the political like narrative across as well was always like so unique and always had some like further depth for a character that was just like so rich. And like, yeah, I loved how they consistently push it forward and always kind of push you on your toes again of like, cause our brains as viewers was like, well, the Cylons are all bad. So like, if you're even being questioned to be a Cylon, then then there's something wrong with you. And like, there's no one who's like making it out of this like wartime without pain and hurt and knowing that your actions hurt somebody else or, it was so good. So good.
Those are like my basic examples of characters. I'm sure there's more. And like,
sure.
If you're listening to this and you can think of dumb heroes, please definitely comment below and let us know. But I want to talk about the truest anti-hero and the most true villain, I think, in all of content, space, IP world.
Okay.
I'm going to start with the truest villain of all time.
Great.
And you're going to laugh at this one.
I'm ready.
Voldemort. I think Voldemort is pure dang nasty evil. And I've only read the books 1 through 4, and then I watched the movies. I have looked at YouTube videos that do deep dives in theories and things. Yeah. But from what I can gather, Voldemort never swayed. He was like, I'm going to do this, and I am never going to question it. And from what I can tell, he never does.
Sure.
He murdered a woman in front of a baby, and he seemed A-okay with that, and then kept going. So he is the truest villain. Like,
and then went out to kill the child.
Yeah, like a Vader.
As a child.
A Vader, right?
Yeah.
Is not a true villain because he swayed. He swayed multiple times. Like, holy shit.
True.
Other like big villains, like you could argue maybe Sauron, but even like Sauron, like.
We're getting backstory on him, so
we're getting backstory on him, but like, but even him, like, he didn't necessarily like sway. He just kind of sucked.
Yeah.
Just kind of sucked at being a bad guy.
Fair.
But like Voldemort truly believes what he's doing.
Yeah.
Truly believes he is the hero.
Yeah.
Of the story, and he just never sways. So he is, to me, he is when you think villain. Voldemort. That's it.
We never almost get any, Harry Potter praise from Ravi, so this is great. I mean, agreed. I was so scared
JK
of Voldemort as a kid.
Brain, like, I think did a good job, unfortunately, with that.
Yeah, true.
But yeah.
So who's the ultimate anti-hero?
And I'm not saying this because Deadpool's coming out, but Deadpool is probably the truest anti-hero.
Yeah.
Where he is doing things not only for self-interest,
yeah, but
he does on occasion do the things for the greater good. But at the end of the day, he's making sure that he is having fun while doing it. And like, I think it really stuck out that he is like anti-hero when I was scrolling through the Reddits and I came across the comic book subreddit.
Yeah.
And they had a couple of panels from I don't think it's a recent Deadpool comic. I think it's a couple years old now. But it was Deadpool was just kind of in New York City, just hanging around, and he comes across this girl who's on the roof and about to commit suicide. And the traditional hero standpoint, like if Spider-Man came, he would forcefully remove her.
Sure.
He doesn't do that. He basically like takes her on a joyride and then eventually takes her to like a mental institute or place or whatever.
Sure.
And it's like, I'd like
5150, sir.
I'd like you to like go in there and deal with whatever problems. But he's done in such a way where it's like it feels more human, if you will, than like what a hero would do.
I see.
And that to me is what stuck out, where it's like, yeah, this feels like the real anti-hero.
Yeah. And I think what's interesting too is, I mean, I think that, in the essence of like, Deadpool being in the Marvel world of it all. So like in the Marvel world, I think some of the recent Marvel attempts to like show either like what happened in the blip or like what happened after New York 2012 or things of that nature, where it's like the destruction that these heroes caused, and then we just see them kind of dip, you know, and they're just kind of like, okay, back to Avengers Campus and up you know, upstate New York, like this is pretty, like the space of like, I think Deadpool is kind of in that mess, like he's kind of just like, well, like we're here now, you know, like, and I think that's, you know, that's something that like the Hawkeye of the world, you know, or the show Hawkeye, like maybe tried to be like, oh, there's still this destruction left after 20, you know, like there's all these things that Marvel has kind of tried to do. But I think kind of unapologetically Deadpool does just like lend himself to that, where he's kind of like, everything's a mess anyway. I'm a mess. Like you want a mess, you can just talk to me as a person, being, creature, thing, and like that's on that, you know, like he is very in touch with like there's this mess to be had and or already happening, so like why am I gonna try and be like this
savior
glorious
thing
you're gonna put on a t-shirt? Like he knows, like unless I'm in a mask, you're not putting me on a t-shirt.
Last quote from the Psychology Today article that I thought was really like telling of the anti-hero and specific with Deadpool. Dark characters act on impulses many of us have but cannot act on, which allows fans to explore what they might be like in a safe way. Which I think is like, I think it's good. Like it is good therapy for a lot of people to like, yes, have ideas play out, if you will, in safe, controlled environments and ways and ideas and things. So
I mean, to me, I think that's the beautiful thing about stories in general. Like, I think that there's, and I know that there's like, in a sense, classical literature or something that like would speak to these things more eloquently than I will. But the space of you take stories away from, or like people's ability to tell a story or something, and like you're going to lose culture. You're going to lose like sanity in the world. Like all these things is like people hearing stories, and like most ultimately from each other, like hearing someone you love like tell their story and like what their parents learned or what their families are learning, like all these things, right? But like also like from characters you just grow to care about, you know, and the space of like that's a safe, like grandiose world you can dive into that isn't destructive, allows you to connect, allows you to have empathy, teaches you sometimes like good and evil, but then also like, oh, there's also complicated characters that like exist, and I can exist in that too. So yes, shout out to stories. May you not leave us anytime soon.
Hopefully. I mean, who knows? We want more original stories though too, please. So the big question, did I blow your socks off or knock your socks off with my proven statements here, my takes that show that heroes are all stupid?
I agree. I mean, I think so. And the space of kind of like, I think even from the beginning when I'm kind of like, oh, I like a complicated telling, like I think the space of like, oh yeah, like I think just like the point blank space of like, oh, like I love an anti-hero. Yeah, in a sense way more than a hero. And I think that that's like something exciting that hopefully stories are going further to, are like, hey, there's this complicated character that, you know, has a weird backstory, has a weird family or something, whatever. And doesn't that be weird, but just like this person with layers, and then we get to like know that person and not just think like, oh, they need to be like cookie cutter, this is the person, you know, like I love that. So no, knock my socks off, and I'm like ready to ride into the night for the anti-hero.
Woo! Yay! There we go. That's going to be it for us here on KYSO Podcast. As always, you can find us on the socials, TikTok, KYSO Podcast, and on YouTube, youtube.com/KYSO Podcast. New pods every Saturday. Till then,
stay weird.
Stay spicy.
It's complicated. It's complicated.
Where are the Taylor Swift songs?
Yeah. Hi. It's, what is it? I'm the problem. It's me. It's that song.
That's the
at tea time. I don't really know.